like today to talk with you on certain aspects of development. Development being narrow or myopic, or development being holistic. And as I stand before you here, I remember of my young age when I was a college student, engineering student. I did my diploma and then readily got a job in one of the biggest engineering company in Pune. And I think I was all set for rising high on the ladder of upward mobility, as it is called today. Getting good salary, maybe owning a house, then having a two-wheeler at that time. Cars were not there in this quantity or this number at that time. 40 years ago I'm talking about. And getting developed. Whatever the individual or family development is there, I was set for that development. And everybody, including my parents and my relatives, were expecting that I would rise high on that ladder. But somehow from within, I was rather disillusioned with what was called as development or what is called as development. I always used to think that development cannot be only material growth or economic growth in national terms. I thought development has to be a holistic concept. It relates to so many aspects of life, so many facets of life, including maybe arts, religion, science, philosophy, so many things. But we find today that this concept of development has been greatly narrowed down. And I always say that it is this broad concept, and the totality of that concept has been lost. Because this concept is hijacked by people called economists. Actually, the concept belongs to all the faculties of studies, we can say. But the concept has been hijacked by economists and say that it is only the economics that would rather say that they will think about development. And they have defined development, they have narrowed down the concept so much that say that only economic growth. What is development? Economics has taken it up. And all other aspects of there's a philosophy, psychology, spirituality, they totally disregard for that. And they will say that what development means today. They will define development as growth in GDP, that golden arrow of development. It will denote, say, growth in three things. At a national level, it will be growth in gross domestic product, as we call GDP is gross domestic product. And then at the individual level, the development will mean growth in per capita consumption and per capita production. So the basis of all this economic growth, it is called as the growth in GDP is called as macroeconomic growth. The basis for this growth is increase in consumption. The C, per capita consumption, is the most important part of it. Each and every individual has to increase his consumption of each and everything. So that will increase the per capita consumption of everything, and commensurate with this increase in consumption, there will be an increase in production. Per capita production of everything will increase. And when the production of all the things that are taking place in a country will increase, it will add to GDP. This is called as gross domestic product. So this is how today development is defined as. And that's all. All the other aspects that we saw, philosophy or psychology or environment or ethics or sociology, everything, there is totally disregard of that. Totally blind eye is turned towards that. But what happens when this type of development takes place? What happens? Actually, when only economies grow, we have to pay a very heavy price for that development. Economies grow, certainly, but we have to pay a very heavy price. And that price is of inner environment, we can say, milieu interior as we call it, our body, our mind. We have to pay a heavy price at that level. And in the external world, we have to pay the price for this particular growth at the level of the families, at the level of the societies, at the level of the nations, and at the level of the environment. We will set aside the other aspects. We will give more attention to what this development does at the level of the environment. We see that production is constantly increasing. That particular golden arrow of development is there. Growth in GDP, growth in per capita consumption, growth in per capita production. But for all this production, what happens to resources? They start depleting. As the production increases, the resources go on depleting. There are two types of resources, renewable and non-renewable, and both the types of resources, they get depleted as production of everything increases. We use energy resources, they also go on depleting. The coal, the petroleum oil, the uranium, they go on depleting. Then what increases is when we use more energies, pollution increases. When we use more chemicals, pollution increases as well as waste increases. So commensurate with the increase in GDP, pollution is on rise and waste of all sorts is on rise. And due to all these problems, the fifth thing, that is biodiversity, it goes on reducing. There is loss of biodiversity, as we call it. So when we look at the whole process of development as it is taking place today, we find that production is increasing, consumption is increasing, but the resource base for that future development is in jeopardy, it's in danger. So if this process continues for long, it has continued for 250 years since the beginning of Industrial Revolution, but will it continue for more 500 years more? Then the answer we have to give is no, it cannot continue. This process of development we call as, it's a process of destruction, this development is non-sustainable. And so we have to give attention more to what real development means. If this development is material growth, is economic growth, if it is non-sustainable, we will have to go for a pattern of development. We will have to go towards a concept of development that will be holistic, that will be sustainable at the physical level, and enriching, and real development will take place at all other levels. So what are these levels then? I will say this total concept of development has two parts. One is inner development and other is outer development. When we talk about inner development of man, say, it will have four levels. There should be development of body, development of mind, development of intellect, and development of spirit. Today we find, if we want to put the whole thing in a nutshell, that due to today's development, that is economic growth, we are facing problems at all these four levels. At the bodily level, we have so many diseases and disabilities. At the level of the mind, there is imbalance. At the level of the intellect, almost bankruptcy. At the spiritual level, there is total void. So we find today that consumption is increasing, but at the cost of so many problems at all these four levels. And in the outer part of the development, we find that there are so many problems at the level of the family, maybe divorces, maybe juvenile crime, maybe so many things. The societies, there are so many pathologies at the level of the society. The nations, they are facing so many problems within and at the international level. Maybe wars, maybe arms race, maybe so many things. And at the level of the environment, as we just saw, the environment is degrading in all its aspects. The resources are depleting, pollution is on the rise, waste is increasing, and biodiversity is decreasing. So you find that at all the 8 levels we can say today, the process is one of destruction and not of development. So we will have to go for a process that develops us at all these levels. At the level of the body should be have full strength. It should be without any diseases. We should be able to do all the jobs that we do with the body. Then at the level of the mind, mind should be at peace. Today we find that excitation of mind is the goal of the whole process of development. But actually, if we see, constant excitement of mind cannot be the goal. That will tire up the mind. That will wear out. So at the level of the mind, development of mind means making the mind peaceful. It should be calm. So calming down of the mind, having an emotional balance is what is called as development of the mind. At the level of the intellect, we must have pure intellect, which tells us what is right and what is wrong, and that tells us to go on the right path. That is the actual use of having an intellect, and we don't use intellect today for that purpose. We must use it for that purpose. It should guide us on the right path. Shuddha buddhi, as we call, sattvika buddhi, as we call, that intellect should be pure and it should take us on that path. And at the level of the spirit, it is the evolution of consciousness. What is spiritual development? It is the evolution of consciousness. From I, me and mine to we, to including everything and ultimately the whole nature. When we take everything in our fold, that is called as the development of spirit. It is the enfoldment of the spirit, it is the widening of the spirit, it is becoming almost encompassing the whole universe, we can say. And that is the goal of life. In Indian philosophy, it is told, latest period we can say, very nicely Swami Vivekananda has put forward. What is the goal of life? Can material consumption and consuming more and more be the goal of life? It can never be. The goal of life, Swami Vivekananda says, is spiritual goal of life. Goal of life is to manifest the divinity within. And then he says, there are 4 paths of yoga. Do it by work or worship, psychic control or philosophy. By any path of, or any combination of these paths, we can rise high on this level. So, in the inner realm of development, we will have to develop at all these levels. And in the outer world, we can say, the families must develop. India is very felicitated for having good family system. In family, there is mutuality, there is love, there is caring for each other. That builds up a family. And that helps us to develop an individual again. When family is at peace with itself, our mind is at peace with itself. And so, individual can develop when family system is good. The same thing about the society. Today we find a society is plagued with so many pathologies. In society there must be harmony, there should be peace, there should be give and take of all good things between the sections of the community. When community is like that, when the society is like that, that is called as the development of the society. The nations. Within the nations, there are so many families, so many individuals, and so many societies are there. They should live in harmony and peace with each other. And ultimately, the goal of each nation can never be to increase its own GDP. We cannot have nationalist goals because that nationalism, over-nationalism we can say, excessive nationalism will hamper the development of environment. When each and every country on the face of the earth tries to increase its own GDP, it will result in exploitation and colonialism. Whatever the developed countries as we call today, all the developed countries are developed only through exploitation and colonialism. Because there is excessive nationalism. We give more importance to gross domestic product or gross national product. Okay, the nation has some position on the face of the earth. But it should not be we should not be over nationalistic. We should be globalist. This is the ultimate the system we can say. The biggest system here is the nature, the environment. And we must give more attention to the development of environment. We must conserve environment. We must conserve resources. We must use less resources. We must manage with less energies. We must use bodily energy more than the produced energy like electricity or petroleum fuel or coal. So that's how when we keep this particular whole holistic approach towards development, the inner development and the outer development, then and then only an individual can really develop from within. There can be a development or at least sustainability at the outer level. And so, friends, I totally got away from that engineering jargon and all that and job, etc. I left my job. And for last 25 years, myself and my wife and children were there when they were small, they were with us. We started to live in this particular fashion. We tried to live this way. Because this can only not be a thinking part of it. Thinking is okay, first there has to be thinking. But this thinking must lead to actually living all this thinking in practice. So we thought 25 years ago that we must live by this principle. Our goal should be this total development, holistic development as we call it. And so we left the megacity like Pune in 1993 and we shifted to a very small place in the Konkan region, the coastal region of Maharashtra, Konkan region. And there is place is called as Kudavale, and there we built a very small house. The house is built with as less non-renewable resources as possible. Very less cement has been used, very less stone has been used. All the walls that you see, all these external walls here, they are of mud blocks, unburnt bricks as we call them, and the mortar is also mud. So all these, practically all the walls here, they are built up of mud. And then the flooring, here somewhere, the flooring of the whole house, there are no tiles have been used, and we have the earthen flooring there. We coat it with cow dung every week. Myself does it, my wife does it. And then on the energy side of it, we thought that we must not use petroleum anyway. So almost I think 13 years ago, we returned our collection, LPG collection to the dealer, and now we have a solar cooker. 2 of them are there, and this chula is also there in our kitchen. And I myself, not only my wife, but myself also can cook on chula and make a good delicious dishes. If you come, I will serve you. And in our front yard, we have this solar cooker, which we use for half of the part of the cooking, as well as the cooking of hot water for bath. For that, those 2 purposes, we use it. And we have a bicycle. I have never driven a petrol-driven vehicle. No 2-wheeler I have ever owned, or I have driven no 4-wheeler. When I have to go to places, I go by state transport buses, the public transport I use, or railway I use. So I don't own a vehicle, I don't drive a vehicle. Because I have not to use petroleum, because petroleum is a resource which is depleting on the one end and polluting on the other side. So like that, we are trying to develop our own life in this holistic way. And I think I will request each of you to think on this particular aspect of development, make your concept of development holistic. And I think before we go and think about development holistically, start living whatever little we have, what is possible. If we can do something today, start doing it. Because action is more important. In English they say an ounce of practice is more important than a ton of knowledge. So, okay, you can get a ton of knowledge about development from many sources, but living that particular knowledge, bringing it into practice is more important. That's what we are doing. And I request all of you to be a part of this process of holistic development. Thank you very much.